Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is implode, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Kautar. Thank you so much for this suggestion. Now, let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb implode can mean to burst inward. So as you see this particular word, I know it's come up with some of my students in other classes. Hey, what's the difference between explode and implode? They sound a bit similar. The spelling has some similarities. Explode is really about going outward, and implode is inward. So you're going to see that in a few of the definitions here, especially number two. So we can use this verb to describe the action of something collapsing or causing something to collapse rather violently inwards. Sometimes this is done intentionally in order to demolish or destroy something. We'll see some examples of that a little bit later. A third way to use the verb implode can mean to end or fail suddenly or dramatically. I know I have heard this verb used to talk about maybe a particular team that seemed to be performing really well in a game or some type of athletic competition, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart and they end up losing rather spectacularly. So sometimes that action is described as imploding, that really the team, their performance failed rather suddenly and dramatically. Now, a fourth way you might encounter the verb implode can mean to break down or fall apart from within. Another way to think about this is something is self-destructing. So it's not outside forces that are causing this failure or something to fall apart, but it's more internal. Now, a fifth way you might encounter the verb implode can mean to become greatly reduced, as if something is collapsing or falling inward. We'll see some examples of that in just a moment as well. But for now, you should know that implode is a regular verb. To make our progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the pattern vowel consonant E. We're going to add our ing, and that forms imploding. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now, our base verb, while it ends from a spelling perspective in an E, the ending sound is a d or D sound, implode. That means when I add that ed ending, I'm going to add an extra syllable to my verb. I'm going to make an id sound. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: imploded, imploded. Okay. Now, we don't have any additional phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move on to our verb tense practice. Today, I thought it would be good for us to review the simple past tense and the simple future with a focus on be going to. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this to talk about a completed action that occurred at a known point in the past. Many times, simple past tense sentences will have references to specific dates or times. It might have a phrase like last week or 4 years ago, but not all sentences will. That known time period can be implied as part of a conversation or as part of a longer text. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple past tense is that our structure stays the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, you're going to see the subject, you're going to see the ed form of the verb, and that's how we're going to make our affirmative or positive example. Let's look at an example here. Ocean Gate's submersible imploded in June 2023 killing 5 people. Now, this is a sad but true statement. Here we're talking about this this type of thing that could go deep under the water. It was designed to go explore the wreckage of the Titanic, the very famous ship. It made a few voyages, but unfortunately, and again, this is very true, the pressure of the water is sort of what caused it to collapse inward, and that resulted in the death of 5 individuals who were on this journey to go see it. This, as I looked for examples of implode, I have to tell you, I saw so many references to this. There's going to be some type of documentary coming out very soon, and so you might encounter this word if you watch the documentary in the near future, or if you read about this event. I think it also helps us illustrate that difference between implode, kind of causing to fall inward, and exploding, meaning to kind of push out. Now let's take a look at the negative simple past tense. To do this, what we want to do is start with the subject, use did not, and then the base verb. We can also use the contraction didn't and then the base verb. But notice, we are not adding an ed ending here to the verb. Here's another example. The state didn't implode when its governor was charged with corruption. Well, this might be that kind of failing dramatically. It's sort of saying things did not fall apart. The state government was still able to function, even though there was this kind of horrible particular scandal. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, we start with did, then we're going to have our subject, and then the base verb. Again, notice how I'm not adding ed to the end of the verb. Another example. Did they implode the old hotel? Right? So here, this might get to that meaning of demolishing something by causing everything to sort of fall inward. And of course, that's much safer than exploding something to destroy and have many, I don't know, thousands, maybe a million pieces going in a variety of different directions. Now let's move on and talk about the simple future. Today we're going to make sentences with be going to. It's pretty common to use that to discuss plans, but you might encounter it as people make promises or predictions for the future as well. When we make sentences in the simple future with be going to, we need to pay attention to our subject. And that's because our form of be is going to be in the present tense, and we have 3 forms of be. So if your subject is I, you should use am, going to, and then the base verb. But if your subject is you, we, or they, use are, A-R-E, going to, and then the base verb. Finally, if your subject is he, she, or it, you want to use is going to, and then the base verb. Let's take a look at an example. The vacuum tube is going to implode. We might be back here to either that first or second definition, talking about something bursting inward, for example. Now, if we want to make a negative simple future sentence, again, we're paying attention to our subject. We're going to use a form of be that matches, followed by not, then going to in the base verb. Here's another example. China's economy isn't going to implode. Saw many sentences rather similar to this as people were discussing new policies in a variety of different countries and how that might impact various parts of the economy. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question, you can start with our form of be, then follow it with the subject, then use going to, and then the base verb. Here's a yes or no question in the simple future that I've heard a few people ask in the United States. Is our whole country going to implode? Might go back to our fifth definition here as people are kind of wondering about the future and various institutions and really kind of the state of democracy in the United States. Now we'll move on and we'll talk about some words that are related to our verb implode. And we're going to start with the noun form of this word. We have a spelling change, different ending here, and we're going to pronounce the noun implosion. Implosion. Just like our verb had a few different definitions, this noun can also have a couple different meanings. One way to use it is to talk about the instance of something collapsing rather violently inward. We're back to that kind of idea of maybe something bursting, falling in on itself. So, an example of this might be people were prevented from being near the smokestacks during their implosion. So this sentence is getting to that idea of the demolishing of something. So we're trying to get rid of, bring something down. And maybe instead of pulling something apart, the only way for us to do it really is to have it kind of safely collapse inward on itself. Now, a second way to use the noun implosion is to refer to the sudden failure or the sudden collapse of maybe an organization or some kind of system. An example of this might be this question: are we witnessing the implosion of the world's richest man? I saw a sentence very similar to this in the last month or 6 weeks. Of course, it was referencing Elon Musk and his involvement in the US government, and then sort of the subsequent activities and fights that he has gotten himself into. And again, this person is sort of wondering, is he and sort of all of his wealth going to collapse here? Or will it sort of continue into the future? One more word for us today. It's the adjective implosive. What this is describing is something that tends to implode. So it could reference that first definition where we're talking about collapsing something. It could also be describing a sudden failure of something. So an example of this might be the implosive demolition will take place at the power plant next week. Here it's really telling you how something is going to be demolished or brought down in pieces. Thanks again to Qatar for suggesting today's verb implode. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.